What's up everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're pretty much going to be talking about adulting and how to get your life together, because we're going to be talking about credit score, how to improve your credit score, how to get credit, also how to save money. We're going to talk about apartment hunting. We're going to be talking about how to save for a house. We're going to be talking about student loans, all of that fun stuff, all in this one video. I feel like a lot of times we're just like, yes, new apartment, new house, new car, new this and that. We don't actually talk about the steps that it takes to get there. And I think that's really helpful, especially because they don't teach this stuff in school, you guys. So I'm just kind of sharing the knowledge here, what I find helpful, what I've done within the past few years to raise my credit, save money, and all that fun stuff. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe. The red button is down there. When you click it, a little bell is gonna come up. You click the bell, you click the bell, and then you get a message on your phone every single time that I upload a brand new video, so you're not gonna miss out. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So I have all my notes pulled up here. I typed everything out and I put it in kind of different categories. So I have credit, saving money, apartments, and then a few just other questions. So the first topic we're gonna talk about is credit. And nobody really asked this, but of course I'm going to mention it because it's quite important. So how to even start getting credit to begin with. So before I even started my credit, my parents actually didn't want me to get a credit card because they didn't want me to max it out. They didn't want me to not be able to make the payments on it because I was fairly young. I ended up still getting a credit card and it's gone very well for me. The credit card that I have is a $500 limit. And I did that purposely because if I got $1,000, $2,500, $5,000 limit, like I would just be like at Sephora, just, you know, and I did not want that. I was smart about it. I was like, I'm just going to keep it at 500. That seems very reasonable for somebody who is just starting off with credit. And it's worked very well for me. I only use my credit card for emergencies or when I'm just low on the coin. I've always made sure to make my payments on time, not one day late, because that affects your credit score. If you make late payments on your credit card, they ding you for that. Like, you have to be on it. So if you get a credit card, make sure you're going to be able to pay the minimum, at least the minimum. I would suggest, you know, paying a little bit more than the minimum because that also helps your credit score. But make sure you're going to be able to pay the minimum. So if the minimum is $25 a month, make sure that you're able to, I don't know, put in maybe $35 a month just to pay it off quicker and make sure that it doesn't keep accumulating. There are also a lot of other ways that you can raise your credit score besides using a credit card. So on my Credit Sesame app, I'm able to see like all the different accounts that are under or that go towards my credit or that affect my credit, I guess you can say. And when I first started college, I didn't know that my student loans counted as credit. I know that probably seemed a little bit like, come on, Sabrina. But I mean, that's something that I really didn't know. And I'll dive into what apps I use and what apps are helpful for this kind of stuff in a little bit. But yeah, that's one thing that affects your credit score are your student loans, also your car loan, your credit card, any other loans that you have. So for me, when I got my MacBook Air, I actually got it with a loan through school. And I just make payments on it monthly because at the time I didn't have like $1,000 to just throw towards a laptop. So I was like, let me just do this and pay it off. And it helps a lot. So now that we know what kind of loans people can get to get credit and what kind of accounts you can have and different things like that, how does somebody know when their credit score is going up, when it's going down, what's affecting their credit score, what accounts are on there, just basically the entire rundown. And what I use is Credit Sesame. It's what I was talking about earlier. And on here, you're able to see your credit score. So I'm pulling mine up right now. So the first thing I see when I log in is my credit score. And there are different levels. So poor credit score is anywhere from 0 to 550. Fair, which is in yellow, is anywhere from 550 to 640. The goal is to be anywhere above or around 640. It just depends on what app or what website you use or, you know, things like that. But from here, it says 640 and higher is good and excellent. That's basically where you want to be. You want to be on the second half of the little half circle that's on here. I'm gonna try my best to navigate through this. I obviously don't want to put my personal info out there for everybody to see, but when you scroll down, it also gives you a few credit cards or loans that you might qualify for based on your credit. And it's good to have, I think it's good to have more than one account, because if you only have one account, sometimes that's not enough for them to see if you're actually able to keep up with payments and things like that. And it doesn't really raise your credit score as much as if you have a few accounts. So it tells you on there a few other accounts that you might qualify for if that's what you're interested in. If you feel like you have enough accounts open already and your credit score is good, you do not need to get another credit card. And then when you scroll down, it tells you about how much you're paying monthly for the different loans that you have, which is really helpful, especially if you're thinking about moving to an apartment or getting a house. It basically tells you, okay, this is all of the money you have to put aside for all the loans that you have, and then whatever else outside of that you can use towards, you know, an apartment or other things. And then you swipe to the right and it tells you your total debt. So if you have 6 accounts open and you have $1,000 on each account, it's going to tell you on there that your total debt, how much you owe in total, is $6,000. And then you scroll again and it tells you your home buying power. So for those of you who are like, how do I save for a house? This is really helpful because it basically tells you how much they think you would qualify for if you go out and look for a home loan. So, you know, based on how much you owe and how much I guess they kind of can calculate like how much you make. Kind of based on all that, they give you a number as for what they think you would be able to afford if you're looking for a house. And that right there was just some basic stuff that's on the app. There's also a second tab, which is what I've been using a lot for looking for apartments and for saving for a house. And the second tab tells you your credit score, but it also tells you ways that you can improve your score even more. So for me, it says that somewhere where I can improve is the credit history or credit age. So how long I've had credit. So I've had credit for a few years, but they on average take all of your loans and then they average it out to however many years. So let's say you have only 1 year of credit history. To them, that's not enough to really bump up your score. The longer that you've had a credit card, the longer you've had a loan and you've been paying it off consistently, the higher your credit score gets. So because I've opened up newer accounts, it averages out to a little bit lower than 3 years, and 3 years is what they would prefer. So once I hit the 3-year mark of having credit, so basically once my lowest or my newest loan gets past maybe 1 year or 2 years, then my credit score is going to get even higher. I feel like I just threw all kinds of information your guys' way that was just like, whoa, but I'm going to try to break it down and simplify it as much as I can. Along with that, somebody asked, if you're living with a significant other, does their credit score affect the other person's in terms of getting an apartment or other loans? And the answer is yes. If you're thinking of getting an apartment with a significant other, you have to take into account their credit score and their income and all that stuff. Because if you're 18 years and older, you have to both apply. So both of your credit scores are going to affect that. If you have really good credit score and their credit score is really low or they don't have credit at all, that is definitely going to affect whether or not you get approved or whether or not you have to pay like a full month's rent right off the bat as a deposit, or, you know, just different things like that. Because you have to pay a deposit, then you have to pay first month's rent. So sometimes they give you like a $500 deposit, but if your credit score is really, really low, you have to pay like the full month on top of the first month's rent. So yes, the answer is yes, it does affect it. And then somebody asked, any tips for paying off bills like student loans, credit cards? Just organize everything. If you use the app, like I said, it sums everything up and it tells you this is how much you have to put aside a month to be able to pay off all the loans and everything that you owe. And then after that, you're able to use your other money for whatever you want. Whew, that was kind of a lot of info there, but we're going to move on to saving money. What is your biggest tip on saving for an apartment, mostly for furniture? And how do you budget expenses after rent and bills? So the biggest tip for saving for an apartment, if you're still living at home with your parents or, you know, whatever your situation is, make sure that you try to save at least 2 to 3 months of rent before moving out, because when you first move out, you have to pay a deposit and you have to pay your first month's rent. And you want to make sure you have enough money and you're not going to be struggling. So make sure to have at least 2 to 3 months of rent. Just save, just in case. And then of course, as far as furniture, you're going to need to take into account if you have a bed, if you're going to take the one that you have already at home, if your apartment has a stove, if it has a microwave, if it has a fridge, like you have to take into account all that stuff. Tips for living in an apartment / having other expenses, but still saving and preparing to buy a house. That is very, very difficult. That's something that I definitely struggled with at first. When we had our old apartment, I was like, I'm gonna save money for a house while we're here, and it was very hard, very hard, because things come up. Cars need oil changes, you need to pay your tags, your car breaks down or an emergency, and it gets very hard to save. So a lot of things mentioned today just depend on the person. But it just depends on how much money you make and if it's realistic for you to save for a house. So anything helps. Have a savings account where you're not able to take any money out. If you're really bad at saving, that's probably the best option, is to get an account aside from the savings and the checkings that you already have. And just open up an account just for your future house where you cannot take money out, or it's very hard to take the money out. And just throw a few $100s in there a month if you can, whatever you can. I mean, it really just depends on the person, but that's probably the best thing that I would recommend. Do you save little by little per check, or use one check for one thing and next for the other? I usually save little by little. In my bank account, I have I have sub accounts. So I have my checkings, and then I have an account for rent, and then I have an account for laptop, and then I have an account for car. And every single check, I disperse a little bit to each sub account. So someone asked, how much is a good amount to save for a home? And this is something that also really depends on how much you make and what kind of loan you qualify for. I'm barely learning all this stuff as far as all the loans and stuff, but I know that for an FHA loan, you can do as little as 3.5%. I know that also depends on a lot of different things as well. So let's say your house is $100,000. You have to save 3.5% of that minimum to be able to get the house. I know that with some loans you have to have 20%, which that is actually crazy. 20%, that's a lot of money. Even if your house is $100,000, that's a lot of money to have to save. That is just crazy. I don't understand it. But for some loans, you have to have 20% down payment ready to go for when you sign for that house, which is crazy. Plus, you have to take into account, they have to do inspections, closing costs. Sometimes they cover closing costs, but you have to have a lot of money saved. So if you have to have 20% saved for getting the house for a down payment, on top of that 20%, you have to have more money saved up for the closing costs, more money saved up for repairs, more money for them to inspect the house to make sure everything is good and you don't have any electrical problems or pests, or a lot of money. 3.5 is a little bit more doable. It's still a lot of money, but some people do qualify for the FHA and are able to do the 3.5%. Okay, so moving on to apartments. This is going to be a really long video. I'm just letting you know right now. Apartment hunting. How to stay organized while apartment hunting. Do you keep things organized in a journal? And yes, I do. I have a journal where every single time I go to an apartment, I write the name of the apartment, all the questions that I need to ask, and then that way I have everything, and then I take photos and video to every single one that I go to. You also want to have like a little agenda or a calendar, or you can use your phone just to make sure you write down all the appointments that you have for the day. You can also have a folder. If you're like me and you need to stay organized for everything, you can get a folder and make a little Google Doc and put a name of apartment, and then put rent amount, deposit amount, what utilities are included, like little titles and then print out like 10, 15 of them, depending on how many apartments you go to. Print out as many as you want. Put them in the folder. That way when you get to the apartment, all you have to do is fill in the little details and information under the titles. And that way you have everything nice and organized. That's what I usually do. And then just take photos of everything. How did I find the apartments that I've been looking at? Follow me on Snapchat, follow me on Instagram. You've kind of seen more or less where I've been looking, not where, but what kind of places I'm looking for. And I usually either Google or I use my, what apps do I have? I have the Trulia Rentals app. I have the HotPads app, Zillow Rentals app, Apartment List, and Realtor.com. Those are all the apps that I use to look for apartments in the area that I'm trying to move to. And it's fairly simple. Basically, every single app, you go into it, you make an account, or you cannot make an account. It's up to you. And you plug in the zip code, the city, or the state that you're trying to move to. And then you can kind of narrow things down. So if you want a 2-story, or if you want to only pay $1,500 a month, or if you want a place that is pet friendly, you can set all that up and it'll give you all the results for the area that you're looking for and all the things that you're looking for as well. So those are all really helpful apps. That's all I use really. And you're able to save the ones that you like. So a lot of them have like a little heart. You just click the heart and it saves it to your account. So you can go back and really narrow down your results and see, okay, which ones do I want to go look at? Do you think it'd be easier to look on your own or go to an agency or realtor? If you're getting a house, you definitely, well, it just depends on what you want, but I would probably suggest doing an agency or a realtor, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. I don't want to go through the process by myself because honestly, I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. But when I do go look for a house, I'm definitely gonna go with an agency or a realtor. I don't want to do the process all by myself. It's probably easier that way because they already know what's on the market and they can narrow it down based on what you're looking for. What's a good amount to save before moving out to an apartment? So again, it depends on how much your apartment is, but I think I mentioned this earlier. You want to save 2 to 3 months of rent. And if you don't have much furniture already, you also want to take that into account. Is renting a waste of money? Me and my boyfriend are planning on moving in 4 to 5 years and we're not sure to buy or rent. So you and your boyfriend actually have quite a while until you're moving out. So if you both make a good amount of money and you're starting to save and you end up saving a lot, I would probably do a house if you guys are planning on living together for a long time, because a house is quite a bit of a commitment. So if you guys are planning on being together for 4 or 5 years and more, I would probably do a house if you guys are able to afford to save up for a down payment. And then other questions. We're finally getting to the end of the video. My throat is getting all like, because I'm talking so much. I'm self-employed and will be purchasing it on my own. Should I move into an apartment first? So I'm self-employed as well. I'm full-time self-employed and I've been full-time self-employed for 1 year. So for me, it'd be best for me to wait a second year so I can get 2 tax forms. Since you're self-employed, make sure you have all your ducks in a row. It's more difficult to try to apply for a house or a mortgage, get a house if you're self-employed, because you have to provide so much more information and you have to prove everywhere that your money's coming from. They get all up in your business. They want your bank statements. They want it all. So you want to make sure you have everything lined up before going and buying a home. But if you recently became self-employed and you're thinking of getting a house, maybe do an apartment. That's what I'm going to do, since I'm going to wait another year until I apply for a mortgage. Then I'm just going to rent for a year and that will kind of help me too. So this is a question that quite a few people were curious about and wanted to know, and it was, what is the biggest mistake you've made financially while adulting? Also, how old are you? So I am 23 years old, going on 24 in February. And believe it or not, I haven't really had a huge financial mistake yet. I'm still fairly young, so I have a long way to go as far as adulting, but I would say the biggest thus far is when we first moved into our first apartment. We did it fairly fast, and I don't want to say we rushed into it because it ended up working out, but we did kind of rush into it. We had the money and everything, but we didn't expect to have to pay that much right off the bat, because I don't know, I wasn't thinking about having to pay first month's rent and having to pay the deposit and just all the finances that go into getting your first apartment. So I think moving into an apartment too soon, or sooner than we expected, was probably the biggest mistake, but it wasn't that big of a deal. We were able to work it out, and we made our payments on time every single month, and we never were like super struggling. We were eating cup noodles every single day. Like we were fine, but I mean, like I said, I still have a long way to go as far as adulting goes, but that's probably the biggest mistake that I've made. So that was a long video. I can just taste it already. I can feel it in my throat that video is going to be really long, and I need some water because seriously my throat is like super dry right now. But I hope that video and those tips were kind of helpful. I didn't dive too deep into certain things, like especially as far as getting a house, because I'm still learning, you guys. I don't have a house, and I haven't necessarily gone through the process of starting to look for a house because I still have about a year to go until I want to start that process. But I will do an updated video whenever I do get a house, and I'll update you all on what the process was like and what it was like for me, and if it was difficult. And I'll do another Q&A like this whenever I do get my own house. But for now, I hope this video was helpful and I answered your guys' questions thoroughly. So let me know if you have any other questions. Just leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll list all the apps and everything that I mentioned in this video in the description box, so make sure to check that as well. But I hope you guys enjoyed this really long video about adulting and how to get your life together, and I'll see you guys in my next video.